than the idea that he said positive any time.
I mean, right.
Look, you do a show
Sam,
4 hours a day.
Oh, no,
he does a show
Cedar,
5 or,
what a
as far as I can tell, 15 hours a day. And to focus in on that one tiny clause.
This is not one
sentence.
tiny clip, Sam.
Well,
you don't know.
wait,
This is a totality of behavior.
But you
and by
wanted
the
to
way,
bring
it's
this up.
easy,
and
I appreciate that you can hand wave it away and say that it doesn't.
No, I'm not hand waving it away.
Well, you kind of are.
I'm saying this
You're saying it doesn't. You're saying actually I'm wrong.
You know exactly what I mean there. Sam is on. Let's take a look.
Seder, what a fucking nightmare.
How have you been, Sam, since we ruined Steven Crowder's life together? Nice to see you again.
I've been feeling very badly for him.
Yes,
over the years.
It's a tragic loss of a great career and so much potential.
Yes, it is. Hey, are we live now?
We are live on the H3 channel, yes.
I want to just start by sort of apologizing in that I sent you a DM on Twitter 6 months ago or something. I was just going through to find out, and then I just realized you're no longer on Twitter.
Yeah.
So that
he
explains
what,
why.
Is on go in his chat? What do you mean?
He may no. Yeah, I didn't see it. I wish I would have, but honestly,
What do you mean?
I don't know what to do because like I want to get off Twitter, but also it's kind of a pain because Twitter is the way that like I would reach out and speak to most people. But I also don't want to be on a platform that's like owned and perpetuates basically like Nazi
Why would
shit,
I go in his chat?
Yeah, this was yes, I understand that.
Yeah,
but I just wanted you to know I did reach out, and it was on me not to realize that. I just assumed you didn't want to respond, but.
Okay, well,
me.
That's nice to know that you reached out. I appreciate that. And the reason, I mean, obviously, people have been pushing for this conversation. I don't know if you know, like, the whole lore of it, the background of it.
I don't. I mean, this is all I know is that Hasan reached out to me sometime. I mean, I got in touch with you October 24th, and I said that I was meaning to reach out for a couple of weeks. So I assume it was sometime in early October, and my thought we were just going to do this off air, but
that's what I wanted.
My
I was
understanding
like, talk to him
is that you and he were getting into it, and you felt like because he wasn't Jewish, he didn't have a perspective on this, and that's why he suggested that you speak to me. I don't speak for all Jews, just to be clear.
Right.
I speak for only myself as a in any form.
Well, Sam, allow me to speak for all Jews, if I may, today.
Please.
No, actually, I mean that's a total mischaracterization, which is kind of my problem with Hasan, which we can get into if you want. We don't even have to talk about Hasan, but basically, what I told him was that I was citing polling data that shows that about 70 to 80% of diaspora Jews
he's gonna cook
have
him.
some kind of positive feelings
Sam
towards
is
the
gonna
state
cook
of
his
Israel.
ass. He's gonna
And
be like,
he
that's
was
faulty
disagreeing
data.
with
It's
me.
bullshit.
And, I mean, this is available by polls, readily available by Pew Research just last month, showing that. And I have, I don't know if you're quite, if you agree with that
just,
or not. I can pull it up,
American Jews saying Israel's important to them. Israel's important to me, but that doesn't mean that I like Israel.
At least positive feelings about the state of Israel. I was stating that fact to him, and he was saying that I was wrong.
That is just a
and I
question
said, "Who are you to
answered
talk about
by
this?" I did not say
diaspora Jews about whether Israel is important to them or not. That doesn't mean that they're Zionists. Israel's important to me in my life as well.
That's not what I took him to say, but yeah, I mean, Hasan is that's irrelevant to me.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that I haven't seen that poll. I've seen ones that have said that they have a connection. They feel a connection, either strong or somewhat. Yeah. Which is different than positive per se.
So
but regardless, I mean, I think if I don't know your upbringing at all, but I mean certainly my upbringing, my Hebrew education was, I would say, 1/3 Holocaust, and I'm older, and so this was in the 70s, 1/3 into the 80s, 1/3 Holocaust, 1/3 Israel, 1/3 Hebrew, Hebrew and Jewish culture, and I certainly feel a strong connection to Israel, but I wouldn't call it positive these days.
Sure. I think what the poll attempts to is basically, if you ask Hasan or a lot of people on the left, I think an emotional attachment is the way to describe this. So it's like, if you think
I certainly have an emotional attachment, and it's not, but it's not. I wouldn't describe it as positive.
This isn't the one, is it, Dan? There's one that shows 73%.
Dude, he's saying just because you have an attachment to Israel doesn't mean
anyway,
that
it doesn't really matter. Regardless, basically, I want to flesh out my ideas, my thoughts, because I'm being characterized by Hasan and a lot of his cohorts as being, a Zionist, being pro-Israel, being a Israel apologist, being a genocide supporter, being a baby killer, being married to a baby killer, et cetera, right? My wife is Israeli. I don't know if you know that. So basically, I would like to just take the opportunity to explain my ideas, what I think about Israel, and you can tell me what you think, because apparently I will only listen to other Jewish people. So finally, I can speak to someone whose opinion matters to me. So thank you, as the official sanctioned Jewish man, Sam Seder, everybody.
No one said that.
100% Ashkenazi?
That is also a mischaracterization. He has
I haven't
lived experience,
but
and
I'm quite sure I have some Sephardic Jewish ancestry too. So I would mix.
That's good.
Vilnius and Hungary, I think.
Good for you. I think that's always a good thing. My friend, I'm 99.3%, so that's my.
All right,
that's where my authority comes from.
I'll take your word for it.
So at any rate, let me start here by showing you a little context.
Oh, let me also just say, I got about an hour.
Okay, great.
Get home.
I'll just get into it then. Oh, here it is.
Not enough. That's not enough time, Uncle.
Okay, whatever. So let's start here. Let's start with a little icebreaker here. I know we're both fans of Tim Pool. Okay, let's just enjoy this image together. Tim Pool recently at a wedding.
Wait, what?
And can you see? Can you see that?
Did he get married?
Well, I think he's attending a wedding.
Okay.
And he's very formally dressed, except he appears to be wearing a beanie.
I'm aware of his beanie attachment.
Bro!
So I don't know.
Why are you filibustering the conversation?
Fine look for our good friend Tim Pool there. Very good.
Nice suit.
Yeah. So well, let me ask you this: what have you kind of like heard about me? Because I mean, I know that your colleagues have an opinion.
I got to be honest with you. I have not heard much. I have, like, the only thing I really saw that came up in any of my mentions on Blue Sky, I'm also on Blue Sky, is just this issue about talking to me, and I had presumed that that was it. But I don't, like, look, from my perspective, I'm not, and I know that there's been, you mentioned in the email that there's been a lot of grief that you have taken, and I know that other people have also taken grief on all sides of this. And, the personal aspects of this, and, I don't believe that people, I don't actively attempt to deplatform people. I don't think people should do that. I don't think people should be swatted.
This is not going well.
Try to be fired or whatever, or have CPS sicked on them or any of that. I mean, I just don't think that's appropriate. I mean, I'm more interested in talking about my relationship to Zionism and my perspective on what Israel is doing, and what is happening in Gaza. And
I totally agree. Let's just talk about the facts. Let me start by showing you this clip. So I've been actually talking about my feelings on the Israel-Gaza Palestinian dispute situation for a long time. I lived in Israel for 5 years as well when I was with my wife early on.
Doesn't know the full scope
here's my
of
position
his
right after October 7th. And you can tell me if you have any if you have any comments on any of my positions here. But this was posted on. This was from our episode a few days after
he's gonna
October 7th.
Showcase himself as like you know, pro-Palestinian unconditionally.
Liars and bad faith weirdos. So here's what I'll say about Israel. Okay, listen. This isn't the first time I've said it, and I'll say it many more times. The cabinet is run by genocidal maniacs. Okay, they're led by Netanyahu, who should resign in disgrace and go to prison for being a war criminal. Okay. He's made a coalition of the most like radically conservative freaks that don't represent, by the way, the majority of Israelis. And they're hell-bent on genocide, frankly, overtly. They've committed tons of war crimes in Gaza, including the killing of children, obviously, because Gaza is one of the most densely populated places in the world. 50% of the residents are under 18, so when you bomb a building...
I wonder.
The chances. That
I wonder what the background of this show is that he's on, where he's saying these things.
Okay, it's fucking barbaric. It's unacceptable. It's disgusting.
What is Chad saying?
I've seen videos. You know, I saw videos of Palestinian dads holding his dead like 5-year-old daughter.
La, la, la. I was there for this conversation. I know all of this.
I don't need to watch this part because it just gets a little too emotional. But I mean, so that was my take right after.
This is precisely the reason why I literally thought Ethan was with the cause for the longest time.
Like, kind of. I mean, I'm an Israeli citizen. The morning of October 7th, me and my wife were up at 3 a.m. as families were calling into news stations from their safe houses, people being burned alive with their families being murdered while on the phone with news. So coming off of that emotional,
he's so brave. Thank you, Ethan, for saying Palestinians are humans and Israel is doing a genocide even after October 7th.
My reaction. Now, I don't know if there's something Zionist or pro-Israel I said there, but maybe I don't understand.
I mean, I think much of what you said was true. I'm not sure, frankly, if what we've seen Israel do in terms of Gaza is not broadly supported in Israel. I'm not seeing the body politic. I mean, I was doing a lot of interviews with Israeli reporters earlier in 2023 about the protests against what Netanyahu was doing with the judiciary. And there was a question as to whether Israelis would.
He's going to say Sam agrees with me and he hates you because you're anti-Semitic. That's like his goal here is to be like, why have you called me a Zionist when Sam believes that I'm not?
Places like the West Bank and in Gaza in some fashion, and more so the West Bank at that time. And so I think it's hard to make an argument. And look, I would make it's not a perfect analogy as to what's happening in this country, but when you talk about the Israeli population not having a problem with what's going on in Gaza, I don't see a lot of evidence of that. There's certainly, I would imagine, a percentage of Israelis, and I know some of them who think that Israel should stop its assault there, but I don't think I don't see a lot of evidence that a year and a half later,
he's
after
done so
you
much
said
more
those
Hasbro
things,
since then, so it's like disingenuous for him to present that.
This is not the character of the vast majority of Israeli society. I mean, I'm not necessarily convinced that they are as aware. I mean, I've talked to people who have reported in the West Bank, and they said they would go from the West Bank into Israel, and the lack of awareness of what was happening in the West Bank by Israelis was shocking to them. So, I can't say if the Israeli population had a full understanding of what was happening in Gaza, that they wouldn't change their mind. But I don't see a lot of evidence of it.
So as you touched on, this was made basically before the war started. And I think that the unfortunate, really tragic outcome of the war is how much it's jaded
it's not a war, it's
and
a genocide.
Radicalized, I think, people in Israel.
It's not just Benjamin Netanyahu,
it's really,
it's Zionism.
I think people in Israel feel like isolated. They feel like, I mean, the sentiment in Israel is basically that the world wants, you know, the country to disappear, and and obviously, like that's a much more nuanced conversation. But the feeling there has definitely radicalized a lot since the war started. It's gotten a lot worse.
Not a war, it's a genocide.
And I think, I think that gets to it to some extent. I mean, you have this wholesale slaughter. You know, I was looking up, we killed in Iraq, you know, depending on what numbers you want to look at, but you know, I think it's safe to say directly hundreds of thousands of people. But even like the number of children that we killed in Iraq, I think has been surpassed by what's happened in Gaza. And I think one of the things that I find shocking is that the sense and look, I experienced this with family members. Where the sense that, you know, there's a victimization, for instance, let's say on college campus of Jewish students. And I think that to look at what's going on, the totality of what's going on, and to perceive the victims of what's happening here to be the Israeli citizenry or you know, Jews in this country, I think it just blows my mind. I mean,
well, two people can care about two things at once. Why should people?
Oh, absolutely.
Well, people,
no, absolutely.
People who are uninvolved in the war, if they're being like victimized in a separate situation because of their Jewish identity, that's a problem, don't you think?
Oh, I do, but
and you can care about two things. You can't be like, oh, these people are ridiculous for caring about anti-Semitism on college campuses because the war's happening. I mean, you know, both we can care about two things.
100%.
And obviously, one is way worse, right? One is way worse.
But that's the point. I mean, one is way worse, and what's happening in Gaza.
Well, who should tolerate being discriminated against based on their identity? You know what I mean? Like, of course,
well,
who wouldn't react to that?
I don't think that people are. I don't think that people are being victimized. I mean, certainly, listen, anti-Semitism is real. It was real when I was a kid. There was many times I had pennies thrown at me growing up and playing basketball. I mean, there was a lot of. I've experienced anti-Semitism, but you know, I would put it in the context of
which
like,
I agree with.
You're a parent, I'm a parent. You know, if my kid is going through something very difficult, it's obviously difficult for me, but it's more difficult for them. And it's a question of prioritizing these things. You can have two thoughts in your head at the same time, but to center oneself or to perceive that one's victimization is sufficient to ignore the
well, I got to stop you because I don't think I don't know who's doing that.
Well, I mean, I just said like you just presented as the Israeli population feels like they're isolated and this and that.
There's two different separate conversations. There's like the American Jewry who's like, I have nothing to do with that place, and then the Israelis, right? So like when you're talking about,
in terms of the way that you characterized the Israeli feeling, was that they feel isolated, et cetera, and I can understand that, but to not have the first thought of like, we are
Sam will not let Ethan talk.
Committing, like you say, genocidal acts. And if people want to call it genocide, I don't, you know, obviously it's got to be, it's a legal term, but I think that it's colloquially speaking, at the very least, it is a genocide. And to not recognize that as the fundamental issue, the first issue, I think is blinkered. I don't know how else to say it. I mean, it's a little gobsmacking to me.
Well, so I do agree with you that obviously in Israel, people, I think the problem, and just to say on a higher level, I agree with you. Like obviously the people in Israel compared to like what's on October 7th, they were victims.
That Ethan is being
after everything that's happened,
for
obviously
centering himself in this conversation about how he's been victimized as though he's the biggest victim of this entire fucking genocide
of civilians in Gaza and what's happening in the West Bank too. Lots of awful stuff. That being said, I think the problem
but he's trying to
Israel, just to try to explain what's happening there, because I do agree with you, is just like the media apparatus and the feeling that they have there. It's like there's not a lot of space emotionally, and like even the information that they're consuming, I think that would allow them to have that kind of like self-realization. And like you said, a lot of Israelis don't know what's happening
there
necessarily.
are some. I mean,
there's some.
I'm
Yeah,
so
of course,
sorry. They're just simply little old, most powerful country in the region, and its citizenry that's championing this fucking
what was going
Holocaust
on there.
of children.
And the paper was essentially, a cutout, or there was an attempt by the government to basically shut them down.
He moved on from him being the victim to
some extent.
Israelis being the victims.
So what's your explanation
that,
why Israelis don't care? It's not that they're evil, right?
Well, I think, look, there's, I'm sure that there is a mass, sort of like a failure to deal with trauma. But I think some of it is, frankly, is a racism. I think, how can you explain, how can I explain how I just watched a clip of people at a Trump rally chanting USA, USA, to watching a video of people being, taken into that prison in El Salvador and having their head I mean, I don't know how I can explain that. So I don't know how I could explain how the Israelis are able to the extent that they can see what's going on in Gaza, have that reaction. But I know that it's wrong. And I think, some of it undoubtedly is a racism. Some of it is, maybe some type of mass failure to deal with trauma. I mean, I don't know all those things. I think, part of it, I think there's some of the makeup of, immigrants to Israel over the past several decades. I'm sure all of that enters into it.
We had this conversation before.
I'm not in a position to sort of like be able to psychoanalyze it beyond this sort of vague notions.
Sure.
But
yeah, and I agree.
From my perspective, it's gobsmacking, and to me, it has shown, and I never
very well
identified myself as a Zionist as a kid, or through the years, and I never identified myself as an anti-Zionist. I don't think I think it wasn't really until someone heard me articulate my perspective on this that they referred to me as anti-Zionist, and I have, I don't really care that one way or another how I'm labeled, but to me, it shows a failure of that system of government that Israel has.
It's Zionism. That is the problem.
It has failed both,
and Ethan will never reconcile that.
What I think some people had as a notion of Zionism in the
Hannah Arendt.
19th century.
Hannah Arendt.
It has been a failure in terms of keeping Jews safe, frankly. It seems to have been a massive failure. And so I can't operate as someone who lives in Israel, but I can operate as someone who is an American in terms of like what we support, which is why I think we should end all aid. And as a Jew who sees my religion being used as what I perceive as a fig leaf for what Israelis or, Zionists are doing. And so, that's where I'm coming from.
This is really important. This conversation is great to have. I'm so glad he did this. I'm so glad Ethan did this.
If there is a psychological state that can justify this.
Oh, no, they're too stupid to understand it, though.
I don't think there is. And so,
it's just an attempt to understand, not justify. Because, it is what it is, right? Like, it is the way that it is. And so that's for a reason. And it's just, it's just trying to explain it. That's all. I agree with everything you're saying. But actually, one thing I want to pivot to and ask you about.
Do you think that we should cut all aid to Israel?
I think that'd be justifiable, yeah.
And
we're talking about like military aid and stuff. Yeah, for sure. Israel. Israel can make their own bombs and shit.
Every
if they need, like, they don't need American military.
Yes,
I agree with you on that.
I think they do need it to do what they're doing, without a doubt. And
well, what I mean is they're not entitled to it, to say more accurately. Yeah. So yeah, I think military aid should be cut for sure until.
As a Jew, and you know, I mean, obviously you have a different connection to Israel than I do, as you know, through your family and whatnot, and through having lived there. But as a Jew,
Ethan W. They're so desperate for Ethan to come across as even remotely
to what is being done, ostensibly to protect me and my family and my ancestors and my progeny and all of it. It is. I mean, I think it's. I think the conflation of Zionism and Judaism is both not keeping Jews safe and is wrong at its core. And we can see what it's even doing in the context of this country, the way that it's enabled Trump and to attack universities and to attack law firms and whatever. And so I don't know.
By the way, I think Ethan is in agreement with Sam here.
Great.
He's walking back a lot of his positions, but I don't think Gila is in agreement
no, I mean,
with Sam
I
at
agree
all.
with everything you're saying. And part of the reason why, like, this chasm started between me and, you know, Hasan is very influential. So when he decides that somebody is an enemy of the movement for criticizing him, which is what I perceive happened, then it kind of becomes reality.
All the way up until the fucking context nuke.
Is
I didn't know the depravity.
Him not supporting Kamala Harris. Now, would she have stopped the war and been like a perfect dove? I don't know, but I know she would have been better than Trump. I know that for sure. Trump's posting like this insane Riviera, Gaza, the Riviera with Trump hotels. I mean, that's and like he's sending the 20-pound bombs. He's telling Netanyahu, you have a blank check to do whatever you want.
They're watching me as well.
Like,
it just came out that Biden didn't, did nothing to. I mean, listen, I think.
Well, I'm talking about Kamala.
I suspect that
we don't know. We don't know what Kamala would have done.
I suspect.
Like, sure, it would be marginally better, but we don't know.
She would not have had the same policies as Trump. But at the same time, I think that it was a massive failure, both on a real human level. Like, it would have, I think, had she articulated anything even remotely close to what I would hope her difference would have been.
That's the reason why she lost.
Probably,
that was my point.
Had implications in the election, but I think
from Biden's
perhaps even
dangerous
more importantly,
genocidal Gaza policy,
it would have
not removing herself, not severing her ties from Biden early on. That was my major point of contention with the Kamala Harris campaign, and that's what led her to lose.
I chose to support Harris because I perceived her as the lesser of two evils, but.
Yeah, me too, and I think that that's an important distinction to make at a time like this. Yeah,
I can certainly understand how some people were just so repulsed by what was happening that it made it almost impossible for them to vote for Harris. I think
I understand why they didn't. I totally understand the perspective. Like, I'm so disillusioned with this administration, I can't support Kamala. But at the same time, like, a hugely influential political streamer like Hasan,
I never told people not to vote for Kamala.
On people, I think, and who's someone who
not to vote for Kamala Harris. That is a lie.
Who's very vocal about being pro-Palestine. I feel like it's an abdication of responsibility to be like, I'm not voting for Kamala, or I'm not telling you who I voted for. I suspect he voted for Jill Stein personally.
I hate Jill Stein.
But either way, he hasn't said, and he wouldn't endorse her. Now, like, if you're just like a random protester or whatever, and like you're like, I'm so disgusted, I don't want to vote, that's fine. But if you're like a high-level political streamer, and you know, basically, you have the capacity to weigh like the lesser of two evils and what that means, I feel like it's an abdication of responsibility to not make that call.
I mean, I certainly have been critical of people who, generally don't vote for the lesser of two evils. But I think, and certainly, in the run up to the 2016 election, I certainly, that was my perspective. But again, I don't
know why he lies about this.
What the Biden administration was doing was so horrific that her inability.
Yes, of course he's using Sam to try and trash talk me by fucking lying.
You know, I think
I literally have made
sometimes you have to take this at face value.
Videos and
I think there would be certainly definitely other things. You would not be assaulting the government.
Why does he lie about this?
Like Trump
it's
is,
such a basic,
but,
easy to fucking comprehend principle.
You know, I think probably this is the first election in as long as I've been doing this, and I think it's been 5 elections now. I mean, I'm old.
Why does he lie about this?
Really,
I voted on stream.
Condemn someone from taking that
I never
position
told people to vote for Jill Stein.
based upon what we were seeing.
It's not just some random person. I do, and I'll tell you what.
Be worse than
Kamala Harris wanted a ceasefire. She stated that. Trump said finish them. I mean, let's be honest.
Oh
like for someone like Hassan,
said, I want a ceasefire.
I'm not voting for Biden. I'm not talking about Biden.
I understand, but we found out that Biden, in fact, did nothing to bring that about. So,
well,
like, you know,
you can talk about Biden. I'm talking about Kamala Harris. What she said.
I mean,
well, she's the vice president. I mean, at the end of the day, she doesn't really do that much, right?
No. But I'm talking about the candidate. Biden, as a president, said he wanted a ceasefire. She as a candidate said, I want a ceasefire.
But do not, even if you're like, I don't know how much I trust them.
He's not knowledgeable enough to have an adult conversation on this. I'm sorry. It's obvious.
Well, listen, I think it was certainly obvious to me that Trump was going to be worse. But I think, like, if you're trying to get the candidate to
I'm doing a pee break.
Show some indication of this, you know, I can understand that. I mean, I wouldn't do it. I would disagree with it. But
yeah, I get your point too. Like, ultimately, I understand why people wouldn't want to support them because of what they've seen, and like that, it feels like, you know. It feels like
it also shows a tremendous amount of just like electoral malfeasance on her part. I mean, they made an active choice, and I think, you know, you could have put that Palestinian lawmaker from Georgia on stage. They made an active choice to signal to whomever they were signaling that they weren't going to do anything. Now, I happen to believe that she would have been better on this than Trump. But they were making an active choice to do that. I mean, it was really electoral malfeasance on her part, in my opinion. But you know, I don't know what the point of litigating this is per se. But
well, we're talking about kind of my criticisms of Hassan and how this.
I don't.
Well, let me show you this.
I don't care.
Yeah,
about,
I know.
Honestly, I'm like
Let me show you this. This is
I'm
more.
Not, I honestly. Like,
yeah, you don't care. I know.
I don't care. I don't.
And why should you? I don't blame you. We talked about anti-Semitism, and you think that I don't want to put words in your mouth, right? But you seem to have conveyed that, you know, compared to the destruction and everything happening, the genocide, the loss of life in Gaza, the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, that obviously that's way more important. So let me show you an example of something. And again, I know you don't care about the drama. To me, this isn't drama. This is one of the biggest, most influential streamers spreading something that I think is really dangerous. And you can agree or disagree, but it's a short clip, but I'll show it to you. And you tell me what you think.
It's clip chimped. This will never happen, but in a totally just world, any kind of, regardless of your background, any kind of fucking Zionist tendency should be treated in the same way as being a fucking rabid neo-Nazi. And you shouldn't even let someone be the fucking local dog catcher as Felix was posting.
Yep.
If they've ever exhibited any sort of like positive feelings about the state of Israel. I'm so serious about this.
Now, by the way, he didn't misspeak. He doubled down on it yesterday. He said, no, I agree. That's what I think. Now, just to recap, he says, anyone that's had positive feelings at any point about the state of Israel is a neo-Nazi that's not fit to be a dog walker. Now, to me, that seems like extremely dangerous, dehumanizing language about what could arguably be 70% of the Jewish diaspora, and certainly probably people you know in your family.
I'll tell you, there's some hyperbole there, but
that's putting it mildly.
I don't want my fucking Zionist family members to be in office either.
And I'll tell you what I think is really...
Sorry, I got to correct you. He says Zionism, and then he says, if you had positive feelings about the state of Israel at any point in your life.
I got to tell you, if you look at what's happening right now, and you have positive feelings about Israel.
He said at any point in your life, Sam. Just to be clear, about what he said.
Don't try to fucking.
Would I have said at any point in his life, someone's life? But I just think this is such a petty, like the idea that we're going to police. Hold on, let me respond. You want me to respond this?
No,
I don't. Like I say, I don't care about this. But if you're going to force me to respond to it, what Israel is doing right now is so far beyond the idea that someone says any time in your life or not or whatnot. He's talking about Zionism, and frankly, I think it's very difficult for me.
Maybe Sam needs more context to see how vitriolic Hasan is.
Understand how someone could have positive feelings at this time. Now, you want to say in the past and what? Okay.
Yeah.
Like I say, I will grant you at any time in your life that is
not what I said.
too broad a step. But wait, let me finish.
Yeah.
But see, you go in and you're making this about anti-Semitism by doing this hopscotch about a poll that people had positive feelings that Jewish people do, and then therefore he is anti-Semitic. And honestly, that type of conflation, I think, is so dangerous and so disingenuous. I mean, I don't want to get too passionate about this, but I will tell you something. I have had a guy who went to my bar mitzvah, my sister's bar mitzvah, my kid's bar mitzvah, sat at Passover with me 3 or 4 times, call my father and ask him if I'm anti-Semitic. Now, this is just one, that is just an example, an illustration of conflating when he's clearly talking about Zionism. Was it hyperbole to say any time in life, whatever? The fact of the matter is this conflation is dangerous for Jews.
Yes.
It is a fig leaf and a way of weaponizing anti-Semitism that has enabled Donald Trump to do the shit he's doing, that has enabled the slaughter of thousands upon thousands of children and women and men, for that matter. It is not keeping Israelis safe. And this type of conflation, Ethan, is what I find far more irresponsible, frankly, than the idea that he said positive any time.
He's right.
Look, you do a show
Sam,
4 hours a day. He does a show 5 or, as far as I can tell, 15 hours a day. And to focus in on that one tiny clause.
This is not one tiny clip, Sam. You don't know. This is a totality of behavior.
But you want
and by the way,
it's
easy. And I appreciate that you can hand wave it away and say that it doesn't.
No, I'm not hand waving it away.
Well, you kind of are.
I'm saying this.
You're saying it doesn't. You're saying actually I'm wrong.
You know exactly what I mean there.
In fact, I'm saying this conflation is incredibly dangerous. It is disingenuous.
I think it's dangerous
right now,
to ignore what's being described as dehumanizing violent language for American Jews. That have nothing to do with the war.
That is a complete mischaracterization of
it. And that is
it's
what's
not.
dangerous.
He's not fit to be a dog walker.
He never says the word Jews.
He says a neo.
Listen, how many members of Kufi have positive feelings towards Israel? How many millions of members of Kufi, the Christian organization, have positive feelings for Jews? It is clearly not a function of their Judaism. It is not a function of their Judaism, and so it is not specifically.
Perhaps these people will not finally understand.
It describes most Christian evangelicals too.
It may do them too, but it also describes 73% of Jews.
That is not anti-Semitism. That is about
I don't know. What do you
belief.
call it when somebody's discriminating against the vast majority of a racial or religious group, Sam?
I'm sorry. You want to look at evangelical Jews?
I don't care about evangelical people.
Okay, but I'm talking about the way you're constructing this.
I think
you can say the same thing about Christian evangelicals too. It is not anti-Semitism.
I wouldn't be able to have this conversation because Ethan would just be like, you're a Jew hater, you're a Jew hater, you're a Jew hater.
In isolation, which is what we've done here.
Well, you're the one who gave it to me.
Yeah, well,
I don't even want to talk about it,
I disagree with you.
But I'm using your example, and in that instance, that is not anti-Semitism.
Well, I disagree.
Conflation. Okay, well, that's our disagreement.
Yeah.
But I think that conflation is incredibly dangerous.
Well, I disagree as well.
For Jews,
I think
it's dangerous for this society.
Why would he?
I think, frankly, I think it's dangerous to what I perceive as hand waving what's happening here. I know you said you aren't doing that.
I'm not hand waving.
You're doing the opposite. You're endorsing
decades of thought about this.
So right, sure. But the point is, you're saying that this is not dangerous. How dare you care about this? I think it's dangerous
no, I'm not saying that at all.
I personally, I mean,
I'm
Jewish people have a collective memory of trauma, Sam, and it starts a certain way. And it starts with people. It starts with dehumanizing language, like saying you're not fit to walk a dog. I mean, what are we doing here? It's irresponsible language.
He's not talking about Jews.
He's talking about 73% of Jewish people.
No, you said that.
No, that's a poll that's readily available.
No, you made that connection. He did not. Because we have millions upon millions of members of Kufi. We have millions upon millions in this country of evangelicals who also believe the same thing.
Does your dad have...
You cannot say it's anti-Semitism.
Could you describe
say it's anti-Semitism if you're also including millions upon millions, far more Christians.
If he wants his dad to be appointed to local office, and Sam would say no.
Who you mentioned said something to you that he's ever in his life had positive feelings about the state of Israel.
I've had positive feelings of Israel.
Well, does your dad have any positive feelings about it now?
I would assume so.
Not in terms of like I support them, but
I've had
I think
positive feelings. I went to Israel on.
Okay, good. Then you're a neo-Nazi, not fit to walk a dog. How do you feel about that?
No, that's you saying that.
That's literally what he said. I'll play it again.
Thank you. I think like this will never happen, but in a totally just world, any kind of, regardless of your background, any kind of fucking Zionist tendency should be treated in the same way as being a fucking rabid neo-Nazi. And you shouldn't even let someone be the fucking local dog catcher as Felix was posting if they've ever exhibited any sort of like positive feelings about the state of Israel. I'm so serious about this.
Another thing he's doing, by the way, and Hasan
listen,
he plays around with the term Zionist, right?
You can say that's a wrong thing to say. But he's not talking about Jews.
Yes.
He's talking about people who have exhibited these positive feelings, and that includes millions upon millions of Christians.
Yes.
More Christians.
Okay, well, listen, I don't
think your background.
He's not fit to walk dogs, either. Yes, I think it's insane language.
Listen, you don't want to tell me that you have never engaged in hyperbole. You and I both are in this business, and we do that.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. You know, I just think that. You know,
it's you listen. You can say
I just think that like
to say it's an unfair thing to say.
I just think like Arabs that support Israel aren't fit to walk a dog.
It is not anti-Semitism.
Okay, well we're at an impasse on this one.
No, the dog walker is a local.
But anyway,
it's a fucking colloquialism that Felix Biederman,
he's
also
someone that
Jewish,
plays around with Zionism. He calls me a Zionist, and again, I know we're arguing here about semantics of what Hasan said, but I don't think that you could accurately characterize me as that, as it's used colloquially. You don't know, right? But he's saying Zionist tendencies. What does that mean? What's a Zionist tendency?
I don't know.
Yeah.
You're going to talk to him on Friday. You can ask him what a Zionist tendency is. I suppose I would guess. And, you know, like I've looked at polls too, where, you know, people have various different understandings of what Zionism is. Why is he trying to debate me on this? But I think it is
Hasan up so much.
My guess,
trying to fight Hasan through
and I don't know what he was thinking specifically.
Watch
but
Ethan back away from our supposed debate on Friday now, because now he didn't get what he wanted out of Sam.
Whatever in the name of Zionism allows this mass slaughter, I think is horrific.
Sure,
and he's not able to extract. He's not able to extract what he wanted out of Sam.
Disagree on that regard.
Yeah, I think we're so. Another thing is like to take it even further. I mean, Hasan pretty much like openly supports Hamas.
Let's not talk about Hasan. Let's talk about this.
Sure. I mean, what do you want to ask me?
Well, I mean, if you want to ask me about, I mean,
I think he's gonna back away now that he's not getting what he wanted.
I'm not here to explore.
Yeah. I have a list of things that.
But if you want to talk about Hamas, I mean, I think look.
Well, how do you feel about Hamas?
I mean, I feel that Hamas, people can perceive it as a liberation organization. We call them terrorists in this country. We call the ANC terrorists. What
do you think about them, Sam?
Listen, I think there are parts, I would imagine, of Hamas that have done good for the people in Gaza, and I think they have done bad things. But I sort of feel, I guess, ultimately probably like Ehud Barak when he said that were I Palestinian and I was living in Gaza, that it would be likely that I would join Hamas. I mean, that's what Ehud Barak said on multiple occasions, and I think that is very.
Watching someone that has the exact same opinion as I do,
an understanding of human nature.
Saying it from a perspective
that you're not supporting
Israelis,
by the way, just to point out an inconsistency there.
Because he can't fucking hit him on this.
Well, you're not. You're like, I refuse to understand human nature and their reaction. It's just evil, and I don't know how to explain it.
I didn't use the word evil.
Right. I'm inferring because I asked you if you think they're evil, and you didn't really answer that.
His audience thinks
I don't know what Gazans felt on October 8th, but toward Hamas. But I can tell you that we have there is a long history of terrorist organizations or so-called terrorist organizations like the ANC or the IRA, even the PLO,
now, Sam,
that ultimately become political organizations.
I think the comparison to Hamas to what happened in South Africa is insanely disingenuous. And I personally hate when people do that.
I mean, Mandela didn't think so.
Well, Mandela did think so. He explicitly stated that he avoided committing violence on the citizenry because it would make reunification impossible.
Twice they asked
That's
Nelson
something he
Mandela,
said.
if you disavow violence, we will let you go free.
In the totality,
no, I will not disavow violence. You are wrong. I
think under 200 civilians died. And the people who did kill civilians were almost all held accountable for what they did. That's a difference,
Sam.
Sam.
About this?
Well, I mean, I can tell you that
a significant difference.
He stayed in prison. His
prison
sentence was
a significant difference. I mean, I imagine many of those people who committed atrocities on October 7th are dead now. And so
what does that have to do with anything?
Well, that's accountability.
Being killed? Okay. I mean, being held accountable by the party that they're presumably doing the violence on behalf. But
you're saying the entire ANC was held accountable?
No, it's saying Nelson Mandela's party, if someone killed a civilian, they would hold them accountable. They would charge them. They would disavow their actions.
That's not true.
The ANC did.
Yes.
Well, the IRA was bombing places in England and throughout Ireland. I mean, we have even the Irgun or the Stern Gang when they killed over 100
I would not compare
villagers
Irgun to the IRA, by the way.
In 1948. I mean, the history is full of exammples of organizations that commit terrorist acts. Now, I will tell you,
people look at South Africa.
I do not condone the killing of civilians, which is why obviously I'm upset about what Israel is doing.
Sure. The part that I don't like about people say, I feel like people sweep for Hamas by saying, what do you expect,
MK,
right?
paramilitary wing of the
truth
ANC
is that people
bombing campaign that killed 19 people,
South Africa as an
200.
example, but what South Africa shows is that you don't need to commit a violent war against civilians to liberate yourself.
They were violent.
Well, I mean, listen, we had for a year, we had the Great March of Return, where Sinwar himself was involved in that. There was Palestinians marching on a regular basis over the course of the year. I don't know how many it was, 50 or whatever, that were innocent people who went there, and snipers are shooting down unarmed civilians. And so, time and time again, and over the course of the 20 years that I've been professionally, covering this, my attitude towards Israel's willingness to have peace has changed, and my understanding of it has changed. And I can only imagine how more intense that feeling is to be living in a place that is, functionally like, the Warsaw Ghetto, insofar as you don't have access to resources, you have 50% unemployment, the apartheid that is taking place in terms of the West Bank. I mean,
I agree with those characterizations, by the way, Sam. Just to say,
but I can't imagine that my response wouldn't be to pick up a weapon.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know.
It's not really working out.
Well, none of it's working out, is it? I mean,
not much at all. Not really much at all. What is called
the greatest attack on Israelis in 75 years. The notion of Zionism and the way that Israel is organized as a society is not protecting Jews.
Well,
it's not protecting Israelis. It's not protecting Jews worldwide. It is, there may have been a time where Zionism had and there were certainly proponents of Zionism in the early 20th century, in the late, perhaps late 19th century, where there was a notion of a multi-ethnic democracy that fell by the wayside. Folks like Hannah Arendt and Einstein, left the Zionist Congress, and what it has evolved into is, I think, a nightmare for everyone involved. And so, I don't know how I would react in
I love using Einstein as well.
That type of miseration, frankly.
Well, can I ask you?
But again, Ehud Barak said that he would pick up a weapon were he one of them. And
that's fine.
He's far closer to
Sam is a secret weapon.
the conflict than I am.
I'm not saying I don't understand why people pick up weapons. Right? So let me ask you this. What do you think about October 7th attack?
What do I think about it?
Yeah.
I mean, it was horrific.
Mm-hmm. And this was like a military action by Hamas to what end?
I mean, I suspect. I mean, I don't know what the strategy was. I mean, they attacked 2 military bases. I don't know if they were aware.
He's gonna hit the rape stuff now, probably.
That the dance.
The Nova rave.
Yeah, I don't know if they knew that rave was happening. I suspect it was to derail the Abraham Accords, which were going to leave the Palestinians out of the equation, where an authoritarian
you leave out that they attacked Kibbutzim, by the way.
No, yes, of course they did. But I'm saying that they. I don't know what the strategy was on their part.
So what do you think? Would you expect the response of Israel would be to that?
I had no doubt on that day that Israel was going to respond.
Go insane, right? It was going to be horrific. We all knew.
Yes, but I think I think the lack of proportionality was just beyond. Frankly, and I was aware that this was going to be a horror show, but I don't think I had the level of awareness of what they would do to go in and literally level it, destroy what is it, 80-90% of the structures in Palestine, bomb hospitals
as well.
That they would use.
Well, Hamas did know that because that's why they attacked.
Food as a weapon.
I'm more interested in the justification for what they're doing.
Probably took hostages with the idea that they would be able to negotiate.
I understand why they took hostages. I don't understand why they took children and elderly.
I believe that they probably. I mean, this is all conjecture on my part. That they would be able to trade them as a way to inhibit Israel's doing what they're doing, and I don't know if they could have even imagined that. I'm not going I'm not going to endorse Hamas's strategy here.
Well, I'm just trying to flesh it out here because this is what I'm getting to is Hamas. I think they knew that this was the reaction that would happen.
I can't imagine that they assumed that there would be this level of destruction.
I mean, that's why they hate Israel. I don't think they underestimate how violent the IDF can be. You know what I mean? That's why they attacked.
I certainly underestimated that they would go this far.
I
didn't think they'd go this far, but
bomb hospitals.
Okay, so why the fuck are you defending Israel and the Zionist project in any capacity, Ethan?
rules of engagement
Hamas
like this.
thought that Israel would have a semblance of humanity for its own hostages. They were wrong. How was that anybody else's fault other than Israel?
Criticism for their strategy here. If
that's an
understatement.
Ethan is blaming the genocide of Palestinians on Hamas once again.
Well, I mean, they're a terrorist organization
way to try and defend Israel.
Antagonized like the IDF to come mass slaughter their civilians.
I think that they overestimated whether Israel cared about the hostages, without a doubt. I mean, there's.
I'm really disappointed.
I don't know that there would be anybody who would make a case that this
oh my God,
was
his
their
entire
plan
community is like full-blown Zionists.
To have Israel respond this way, that's absurd.
Well, and the same is true of, like, I guess Israelis feel the same way. Like, it was totally unprecedented.
No shot. They're literally fucking going. They're telling Sam.
Maybe they didn't think that their mission would be as successful as it was on the other hand.
I have no doubt that they. Who are you? They did not think that they would that they would have been able to overrun that. I mean, I think we were told that the technology of Israel's fence, et cetera, was perfect and something we should emulate in this country. I mean, Trump was all talking about that. So I have no doubt that Hamas overestimated
overestimated the IDF. Yeah, I got you.
What they would be able to,
oh my God, is bad.
What kind of destruction they would wreak, and they underestimated the violence that Israel would perpetrate on Gaza. I don't know that anyone could have imagined that Israel would
can be to explain the situation. And these guys are just going crazy. They're treating him like they treat me.
Commiseration and bombing churches and bombing hospitals and blowing up universities and destroying the infrastructure.
Sam is hard to listen to.
I mean, it's almost beyond belief.
So one thing that when I was talking to Hasan, and I'm just going to talk about his point. This is about him personally. When I asked him, because this is obviously the $1 million question, right? By the way, just there's not one public bomb shelter in Gaza.
You think that's a good point?
There's not one public bomb shelter in Gaza?
Oh no, he's doing hospital points. Oh, okay. Sam's gonna cook him.
I just think that's interesting. It's pretty fucked up.
What would a 3,000-pound bomb do to a bomb shelter?
Do I think it's fucked up?
Do you think Israel would stop themselves from blowing up a bomb shelter?
I'm not sure I understand the point.
Well, I mean,
do you think anything would be standing anymore?
Well, bomb shelters are underground. I mean, they would definitely be a lot safer.
Dude, they have 2,000. They have bunker busters. They've used bunker busters on fucking refugee camps. They've used bunker busters on hospitals. Why the fuck would they stop themselves from using it on a fucking bomb shelter?
The first one that they went into, they built it when they were occupying Gaza.
Are you right? That's true of that one. But I mean, they have a vast tunnel network, obviously, as everybody knows. But I don't care. I don't want to get into the weeds on this. The $1 million question is like, what can we do? Now it's obviously insanely difficult
as
Americans,
to say. I think we can stop aid immediately. I mean, obviously it's not going to happen under Trump.
I'm in favor of that. By the way,
don't move on. Don't move on. Oh my God.
Okay. I mean, good.
I mean, I think
we should call for all aid to be ceased. And I think we should stop protecting them in the
What
UN.
should have Israel done on October 8th, I guess? Like, what would have been an appropriate response for their government?
Not kill Israeli citizens within the Gaza envelope in a hope that Hamas could not hold them kidnapped.
On October 8th? I mean, I think that there is...
Concede to the positions of Hamas.
They're hitting strategic sites to attempt to take out leadership. They should have... But let's talk,
the leadership was underground.
Yeah, to look at that moment in history,
genocide,
like maybe it was.
I disagree because they had to do something.
Maybe in that moment,
why are there?
They had to go in and bomb or whatever they do. I think that any action that they would have taken at that point, frankly, was a function of literally decades of oppressing people and attempting to bring this to an eventuality.
Right.
I mean, this was.
I can't believe.
And so, what should they have done?
I can't believe his audience legitimately and Ethan thought
you're avoiding,
like Sam would agree with.
Okay, I think what they should have done is begun
shocking.
empowering
anyone who's knowledgeable on this issue that isn't fucking brain broken
This is my
from
favorite
Zionism
answer,
is
Sam.
100% going
saying
to
that
have these
this
exact
is what
same
Hassan told me.
opinions. What
They
the
should
fuck?
disband their government and lift the borders in response to the worst terrorist attack that's ever happened.
I think honestly, when you see that your policies have failed, but I don't think this
You
was
actually
their
don't believe
agenda.
that that's a real thing, though. I'm interested in having like a real conversation. You can't like live in a fairy tale land where, in response to the worst military or terrorist attack of all time, Israel, who's already, as you state, like genocidal and racist and all these terrible things, is going to lift their borders and disband their government.
Well, wait a second. You're asking me what they should have done, and that's different.
No, in a
from
realistic
what I
way, not in a
expect them to
fairy
do.
tale, Sam.
Well, listen, there is no realistic thing. Their agenda has been, it has been quite clear. Their agenda has been, since Ariel Sharon walked on the Temple Mount and tried to scuttle peace talks, the agenda since the assassination of Rabin by arch Zionists in Israel, the agenda has been to bring about this moment. There is no doubt about it. The annihilation of the Palestinian people has been an agenda in Israel for far too long. So from the perspective, it's anything I say is fantastical relative to what they would actually do. Anything.
There's nothing they could have done that because of the situation, anything they would have done would have been.
Poor Israel, man.
There was no plan that on this day they were going to do this.
I feel so bad for Israel for 76 years of apartheid. They just had no other option but to do genocide. That is the logical conclusion of Ethan's argument, by the way. That is how crazy this is.
The agenda.
What, in terms of like
attacking
attacking Gaza or inciting an attack?
I would imagine both, frankly. But to find a way to eliminate the Palestinians, this has been the agenda of at one time what I think was a smaller segment of the Israeli body politic, and I think has increasingly become an even larger portion of the Israeli politic. So, I mean, anything I say in terms of should is fantastical. Anything.
So yeah, okay. I mean, so this is like I understand where you're coming from, right? Like
there was an opportunity for a ceasefire that was called in November, in December. They could have held a ceasefire at any point, and the amount of killing would have been far less. They could have done that. They could have ended it after a week.
I mean, Hamas could have ended the war anytime too.
How could have Hamas ended the war?
By releasing the hostages?
No, listen. Israel has said time and time again that release of the hostages is not going to end their assault on Gaza. They have said this over
I don't believe that's
over and over.
I haven't seen those statements. I've seen the opposite. I believe that
you really haven't seen those statements?
No, I haven't. I'll review them. I mean, it depends when it depends when they were made too, right?
Like, is it hostage family protests in Israel, Ethan? Is because the Netanyahu government doesn't want to release the hostages because they want to keep using the hostages as a reason to keep bombing Gaza because they want to ethnically cleanse the Gaza population. They want to ethnically cleanse the fucking Gaza Strip. You are so stupid.
Coming into Gaza.
Why are you so stupid? You don't understand anything.
That's not true.
Israel's actions.
That didn't happen either.
It's being inevitable.
Oh my God.
Like, when do you think they should have ended it? When do you think they should have ended it?
So who have ended what?
You've asked me the question, what should have Israel have done? You tell me what they should have done. Do you think what they've done is right?
Well, I've clearly stated no, Sam.
Okay, so tell me what they should have done.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, hindsight is a beautiful thing. But in my opinion, like you said, I think some more specific strikes, I think more moving slowly, because as you kind of
just a slower
pointed
genocide.
out but didn't really acknowledge.
When do you think they should have ended?
Do you want me to answer?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the leadership is obviously underground. So it's going to be a long mission of trying to get them. It's going to be a difficult mission. But I think militarily, they probably have some obligation to their citizenry, at the very least, to like take out but we're ignoring the fact that missiles are being shot into Israel nonstop. And I know you're going to say, Iron Dome stops most of them, which is true. But at the same time, I mean, a country needs to respond to that. They can't just allow missiles to be shot in.
Tell me the non-fantastical version of what they should have done. Should have been 2 weeks, 3 weeks? How many Hamas leaders, how many members of Hamas should they have killed before they leave? Because we know that Blinken said on his way out that virtually every Hamas member of Hamas that they've killed has probably been replaced by someone who's lost a family member or an entire family or whatnot. So you tell me, Ethan, if you're the one with the sensical perspective on this, and mine is fantastical, what should they have done that would have been appropriate in your mind?
Yeah. So besides like special operations and stuff, I think it would have been a good idea to, I think there's a space where they could like try to find peace partners in Gaza before just destroying the whole thing. Like obviously they approached it completely wrong, right? But there are ways, I think, that could have happened that are realistic, like trying to forge some kind of
the principal negotiator who had never actually held a fucking weapon. They killed him at Tehran. This is ridiculous.
They were marching in the Great March of Return, week after week after week.
Sam, was there Hamas activity at the Great March?
Sinwar was marching. Sinwar was marching with them.
Were people attacking the border wall?
During the Great March of Return, the first dozens of these things before the snipers, no, they weren't. So there were the people for peace.
Hamas activity at the Great
March of
Return.
There was Hamas activity. They were attacking the fence. They were like trying to cross the border.
They were
but not militants. Militants were trying to cross the border.
That's not true.
You're telling me that in the first dozen of these marches, there were people attacking the fence?
Defending,
correct.
Sniping like paramedics at the Great March of Return, for the record. That's what he is.
Yeah.
De facto
but I mean,
defending.
again,
sniper rifles.
I think that there's a way for Israel to try. I think they can obviously pursue peace. The way that they're doing it is impossible, right? Like, it's fucked up. It's insane. It's genocidal. It's horrific.
They're not pursuing peace.
I'm not saying. I'm saying the opposite,
I don't
Sam.
think Israel is.
Well, you asked me
peace.
what should they have done. I mean, obviously,
yes.
They're not pursuing peace. I agree with you. Like, quite the opposite. That's not what they're doing. But I'm saying there could have been a path, although it's not. I think, unfortunately, I think their response was inevitable based on everything that happened.
You think it was inevitable that they would kill these many people and they would use food supplies as a weapon, that they would have leveled hospitals and universities and 80–90% of the homes? I mean, how I
don't know to what extent, but like a huge response was definitely inevitable. I'm not justifying it, Sam. You asked me a question. I'm answering it. You're putting this on me like I'm saying.
No. I'm just saying inevitability. I wonder
right here.
What you must think of an Israeli body politic where this level of atrocity is inevitable.
Well, you described your and Hamas's understanding of the IDF. I wouldn't say that. I can't say to what extent, but you agree that a huge response was inevitable.
Listen, I believe a response that was inevitable by Israel, and that is because I have a much more theoretically jaded view of that country and their agenda, I think, than you. But to expect that what they've done is inevitable.
To what? Well, Sam,
I just wonder, what it is that you think is in that body politic. Listen, I don't think it's inevitable, just to use an example in this country. I don't think that it's inevitable that we are going to be deporting and disappearing, immigrants in this country. I think it's possible, but my perspective on America is still too optimistic to think that's inevitable.
Yeah, of course there's crazy takes in here. Like you, chum guzzler. You came in here. It's not
inevitable.
locked.
And I think
all you need to do is follow for 10 minutes. His chat is all fucking paid members and subscribers. Don't you think that there's a major difference there? I don't safeguard myself from the opinions of people like you, cum guzzler 22.
Okay. Very few. And no shit. Certainly I was exposing them more than the American population writ large.
But chat is members only.
To perceive what we did in Iraq as inevitable.
It's a different situation. That's completely, that was completely unpredictable. But we kind of touched on it. Where Hamas, and again, to what end this even matters is it doesn't ultimately. But you know, Hamas knew that they were going to bomb the fuck out of Gaza.
Listen, I would imagine Hamas thought there was going to be a response, but they wouldn't have taken hostages if they thought that they couldn't use those hostages.
Well, of course,
as a way
they thought they could. I don't deny
deterring,
that. Yeah.
Of deterring Israel from entering, and that was a miscalculation on their part. They presumed that Israel was more interested in those hostages, I think, than they had assumed.
Well, and that's part of what a lot of the civil unrest in Israel is about, is that a lot of people do care about the hostages and think that the government needs to stop the war and focus on getting the hostages back and not killing innocent civilians. So that
I wonder about that last
Sam
part.
Seder, what a fucking nightmare with Ethan saying
which part?
The part about the killing of innocent civilians. I mean, you know, I think that
I said that's what they're doing.
No. I'm saying I wonder if the Israeli body politic.
Oh, you think the Israelis want civilians to die?
I think the Israelis. I mean, you know, obviously not all Israelis.
There's definitely
but I think that
there are definitely a lot of Israelis that do want the Israeli civilians to die, and certainly the Gazan civilians to die as well.
To maintain this government.
Yes.
Believe
that's what the polls say. Ethan loves his
Palestinians
polls when he's talking about
Gaza,
Zionism.
That their lives have no value, that they are all future enemies, that they that they all represent the threat to Israel. And I think that's...
yes, Sam, speak for everyone.
I mean, I think that's...
They're so mad at Sam Seder. They literally...
A twisted perspective.
Before this conversation took place, I need you to understand, their subreddit was talking about how Ethan should Sam Seder me, because they thought that Ethan and Sam Seder would be in agreement with one another.
People in a
and now
country
they're
that's
fucking calling him
relatively
a
small.
self-hating Jew
So
and
I
shit.
think characterizing like the majority
audacity.
of the public as wanting to kill civilians is a little sick, personally. But you know,
I feel Ethan
guess
is far less extremist.
I mean, I'm basing this on conversations with
you feel that way because he was trying to present himself in this conversation as someone who is actually pro-Palestinian in an effort to use that agreement with Sam against me on Friday. And even then, it unfolded pretty quickly when he got a little bit of pushback, not realizing that Sam has Sam has opinions almost identical to mine on this issue, because that's what every fucking well-read person on this matter would think if they have a fucking humanity.
Certainly, they want hostages, and again, not all Israelis. But you know, look, I can make analogous assessments of the United States at various times about things that reflect poorly on our national body politic as well. But you know, the proof is in the pudding.
Can I tell you something? 300,000 protesters in Tel Aviv, 200,000 in the rest of the country. That's 500,000 people out in the street protesting the government of a country that has like 6 million or 5 million in the.
Are you talking about the protests about the judiciary?
I'm talking about the.
That's what he's talking about. Those weren't
to release the hostages.
No, the hostage protests
to release
weren't that
the hostages.
Big. Yeah, but even I don't think the hostage protests were that big. But it doesn't matter. It was pretty large. But those people literally still turned around and, according to polls, said they want the violence to continue in Gaza. They just want to stop it for now.
Or they were calling for a release of the hostages.
Well, what's the point of telling Hamas to release the hostages? Yeah, of course it's a ceasefire, Sam.
Well, but Israel has, and I know I'll look this up.
Deal with this.
I don't have
500,000 Israel.
Wait. Let's look this up and see how many times the Israeli government has said return of the hostages will not end.
Sam, I'm responding to you saying the majority of Israelis want civilians to die. 500,000 people came to the street for a ceasefire of a country of 5 million, Sam. That's 10%.
Israel just broke the latest ceasefire. Okay, where is the political response from the Israeli people? I mean, the idea that Gazans can be held responsible for an election that happened 18 years ago.
Sam, you said the majority of Israelis want civilians to die.
I think the majority of Israelis do not have a problem with what's going on in Gaza. That is my opinion.
I think that unfortunately might be true to the extent that they've gotten
then we agree.
They've gotten much more radical. Unfortunately, tragically, everybody's been a lot more radicalized since October 7th. And that's tragic. I agree. I think people in Israel are jaded and they're cynical and they don't care, like you said, and I think it's tragic.
Yes. Well, that's what my contention was. I mean, I'm looking at something from May.
Ethan? I wouldn't say most of them want to kill civilians, though.
Well, I think that they don't.
And I wouldn't say that there isn't a sizable portion of of Israeli citizenry that want a ceasefire. When 500,000 people, Sam,
dude, Ethan should talk to an Israeli anti-Zionist. It will probably melt him. Okay. Ethan
this
should
Pew
talk to
research,
like a
39%
guy
say
or Dr.
Israel's
Ofer
military response
Kasef.
against
He
Hamas
will literally melt on the spot.
34%
He
say
should
not
ask
gone far
an
enough.
Israeli anti-Zionist,
Now,
an
granted,
Israeli
that
Jew
was
who's an
in,
anti-Zionist, what their take is on Israeli
May
society,
of
because
this
they
past
say
year.
some fucking
maybe
they say
that's
way worse
changed.
shit about their own
I would
country.
hope. But you know, that's all the most
it's
recent
horrible.
Or
data.
maybe he should talk to a therapist. Honestly, I don't know
I
why he's
know
doing all this.
that
because
sentiment
it's not
there-
going the way he
40% last
thought
year
it was.
said that Israelis should govern the Gaza Strip.
I know that people.
I don't know what's left now.
Yeah, I agree. It's tragic what's happened, because I agree with you that they've become jaded and they've become very comfortable with the idea of violence happening there in general, right? And I think it sucks. I think it sucks is an understatement. I think it's tragic, and like I don't know what. Truthfully, the situation is so fucked up that
Yeah, it's just really
it
fucked
just
up.
feels hopeless sometimes, but.
It
I guess
certainly does. But in the meantime, you know, in this country, and we may not have the opportunity for a while, but we should cease all aid to Israel. We should stop protecting them in the UN. We should stop trying to pressure the ICJ and the ICC, and that's, you know.
Well, incidentally, I agree with all those things too. I think that's the most we can do as a country to try to stop the war.
What do you disagree
and
with
it's
me
something
on, Ethan?
that we should be doing.
I mean, there are some significant disagreements,
and,
even that you brought up.
I think Kamala Harris would have been a
conversation.
lot more likely to do something on that front. But you know, certain
we won't know.
We can't know, and that's the great thing.
Well, listen, I appreciate the time. I gotta go because I'm supposed to have dinner for my child. But,
well, I'll say this: this was way more combative than I expected. Ultimately, though, I don't think that we. What do we disagree on? I mean, I don't know. I don't even know. Maybe I see too much good in the Israeli population. I mean, I don't know what's ultimately the disagreements
He's
here.
trying to farm it. See?
Well, I mean, look, I'm not. It's largely in my mind, you know, impossible to really fully assess. I mean, yes, there was a protest last year, 500,000 people who wanted the hostages back. And,
I thought you would agree on everything.
Well, they wanted the hostages back. You know, I don't know.
It's not a magic wand. It's a ceasefire.
Yeah, and they got a ceasefire, and then the Israeli government broke it, and they.
Well, so hold on. Our disagreements is that I'm too optimistic about the Israeli citizenry.
No.
I'm not here to adjudicate what.
I'm just trying to summarize our conversation. That's all.
No,
well,
he's
I
just
mean,
trying to get a clip.
You summarize for you. I'll summarize for me. I think that, like, you know, it is what it is, and you know you know, I think I don't, you know, remember this conversation. We can put into AI and have it summarize it, but I, you know,
I'll do that for you, and I'll let you know what it says.
All right,
we'll leave it to the robots.
Okay.
Sam, I do appreciate you calling in. I do value your input on all this, and I appreciate the conversation. I think it's good to have, you know, conversations like this, like open and honest, even if they're combative. And I think ultimately on the larger points we agree, but we managed to find things to fight about anyway. And that's what two Jews do, isn't it, Sam?
That happens. That's my understanding. Appreciate it. All right, take it easy, man.
Have a great time with your children at dinner there. Enjoy.
Ooh.
Thanks, I will.
I mean, I'll have the convo now if he wants to, by the way. I'll talk to Ethan right now if he wants to. Oh, he said.
But okay.
He said that was way different than what I thought it was going to be.
I enjoyed that as a watcher.
Was I owned?
I don't think you were owned. I don't think anybody was owned. I think it was two people that are highly opinionated hashing it out. And I think I personally like when people do that.
Yeah,
I don't get turned off by the combativeness.
Thank God we're having this open, free discourse.
That's the half Jewish part of me.
But the truthfully is like, again, on the larger points, we agree. That's why I take cross with this issue of being like, he's a genocide supporter, he's a fucking baby killer, and all this insane. He goes, Sam, you never heard of hyperbole? Yeah, I've heard of hyperbole. It's fuck. You're
the king of hyperbole.
Yeah. So I mean, like, is my downfall that I have too much faith or I have too much optimism in the Israeli
He has too much
citizenry?
optimism for Israel. That's his downfall. It's because he's too kind, dude.
The most.
That was his downfall. He's too hopeful for a better tomorrow.
And I mean, Sam is older, and he's in his 50s or something, and so maybe he's just more jaded.
Dan,
yeah, he
stop,
is more jaded.
Dan, have some
There's
fucking
no
decency,
and
Dan.
so, right?
Listen, dude, he needs you more than you need him. Just be honest.